Welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group call. This is the bi-weekly sync around the SharePoint Framework and the client-side development topics. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a Senior Program Manager from SharePoint Engineering. Typically, this particular call would be led by Patrick Rogers, but he is actually in a plane, so he has a valid excuse not to lead this call. So he's flying back from Redmond back to his home somewhere in the North America. I can't remember where it was. Now, so welcome everybody on this one. This is the bi-weekly special interest group call, quickly explaining what this is all about, because we're always getting new people on these calls as well. So this special interest group call is all around the latest on SharePoint Framework, talk about the SharePoint Framework and client-side development. And also the related topics. I would ask people to remember to mute themselves when you're calling on this call, because otherwise we will have quite a lot of audio background noise. Now, we talked about the SharePoint Framework. We will answer to your questions if you have anything on the iWindow. We'll talk about the BMP JS libraries, and we need to actually update the slide because we always talk about also Office 365 CLI, SharePoint Framework reusable components and controls and all of that stuff. So anything related on, let's say, JavaScript-driven development towards SharePoint is talked about within this call. We do have another bi-weekly call, which is happening at the same time on Thursdays, where we talk about more on end-to-end solutions and also the provisioning, BMP PowerShell, and all of that kind of stuff. So you can choose if you want to join all of these calls, which is quite a lot of stuff, and to join and follow, or you can decide to follow only on SharePoint Framework, or only on provisioning, or only on monthly basis. So there's multiple options to stay in touch within the SharePoint community. Now, today, we're going to talk about a few engineering updates on the SharePoint Framework, and I have some new things what we're been releasing related on our documentation and community side of the story as well. Then we'll do a quick intro or quick run through on the status around the BMP JS client library, so what has happened over there. We'll talk about the Office 365 CLI. Waldek is on a call to actually cover that with the live demo. So in Office 365 CLI, there's quite a lot of new stuff actually available. So Waldek is going to demonstrate some of those. And then we'll have a quick slide on the PnP reusable client controls. Let's talk about them as well. So what has changed there since the previous call, which we have 2 weeks ago. And then we'll have some demos. So, or I would say the first one is not a demo. And please, please, please do remember to mute yourself. There's again a few people with a background noise coming in. So there we go. I'm quickly muting people from here and there. So there we go. So the first one on the demo section is around SharePoint Framework deployment options. So we'll cover the different deployment options what we have for SharePoint Framework. And this is really around explaining what is a tenant deployed solution versus what is the site-specific deploy solution, how the site collection app catalog impacts on that one, and how do you light up your SharePoint Framework customizations within sites. And then it's more around discussion. I have slides. I'm not going to do a live demo on that one because I'm pretty sure that we will run out of time if I would do a live demo. I tend to take too much time on these things anyway. And then we have a live demo from Paolo around automated builds for SharePoint Framework solutions in Visual Studio Online. This relates on one larger project which we are doing related on SharePoint Framework. So we gonna actually talk about that one during that section. And one more time, please, 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 please remember to mute yourself when you are joining on this call, so we don't actually have to mute yourself forcefully on the Windows. Now, let's actually get on going. So before we go to the actual topic, just want to pinpoint this one. If you are interested on participating on this community, we'll talk about these options slightly detailed actually on the following slides as well, but there are multiple different options getting more closely involved with the SharePoint community. So you can absolutely demo or do a live demo in this course around if you build something on SharePoint Framework. That would be brilliant because, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something which has been shared open sourced in a GitHub. It could be your really awesome solution which you are planning to potentially sell to somebody or whatever, just to demonstrate the pattern and explain how it has been built. You don't have to explicitly go deep dive on a code, rather explain how the solution is architected. Now, the second option here is around contributing in a GitHub. So you can absolutely, contributions are welcome. And please, 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 please remember to mute yourself. There's once again quite a lot of background noise on the call. So contributing on a GitHub, if you have time, if you're willing, if you want to share others what you're doing, contribute on a GitHub. Also, you can demonstrate SPFx JS in a project, BMP JS, or other technologies related on SharePoint Framework. And please, please, please remember to mute yourself. This time this is really difficult for some reason. We're getting all the time a lot of background noise. There we go. And then provide feedback. So if nothing else, please let us know what isn't, from your perspective, isn't quite up to date, or something which we can fix from a Microsoft side, and we will fix that sooner or later. Please, please, please give us feedback so we're able to address your gaps related on SharePoint development. Now, let's actually go to the SharePoint Framework section. I actually have quite a few slides here. There's some new development related on assets, what we've been doing, and also new stuff which I wanted to go through. So first of all, we have now, this hasn't been yet even shared in the social media yet, we have a new SharePoint development community pages. So we kind of are gradually moving to a different location. If you go AKMS SP Dev Community, you will be landing on the dev documents or documentation side, and we have the community in the table of content on the left navigation. From here, you can actually find, for example, details around the SharePoint Community Calls, what are we covering in them, contribution options for SharePoint development documentation, samples, and other assets. You can find a list of open source projects, and also clarification on what are the SharePoint repositories in a GitHub, so what they are for. This is now went live earlier today, so this is super new stuff. So we're looking into still polishing the information there, and feel free to submit any pull requests or suggestions if any content is missing from there. Good, but anyway, so super curious on how do you the usefulness of this stuff as well, but it's meant to be a one single location which can be easily found and maintained by us and also potentially you, so that we're able to update the information related on the community stuff easily using the GitHub and the docs.microsoft.com platform. The second thing which went live in the social media, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, I'm not sure if you found noticed this, we have now enabled to download a PDF option in the SharePoint Dev Docs, and which is there for those who need to have an offline version of the documentation. So there's quite a lot of people typically. Some people are saying, why would you have a PDF download option? But there is areas in the world where the network connectivity isn't super reliable, or when you're flying, for example, across the world in a plane, it might be useful that you have a PDF version of the documentation. So you can actually download that. It is working surprisingly fast. I'm not actually 100% sure on the tech behind of this. It is a service which is available in the docs.microsoft.com. But you basically are getting the full copy of the docs.microsoft.com SharePoint Dev documentation as a PDF version. It's not really maybe super optimal from a table of content perspective, but at least you have a full version which you can read in an offline way. Now, other stuff. We went live with this one yesterday, actually. So we do have a new SharePoint developer portal available in the Office as part of the Office new development Office portals. So SharePoint is one of the fellows in here. If you go AKMS SP Dev, that's probably the easiest way to actually see this in practice. You will find the developer portal where you actually find the latest news around SharePoint development, the latest videos around SharePoint development, and the sample gallery around SharePoint development, which is super exciting as well. So we have more than 300 samples available for you and a search tool. So you don't actually have to go to the GitHub and trying to find Potentially, if somebody has done something on a user profile, no, you can actually go to this portal and you can then easily find the relevant sample for you. There's quite a lot of filtering options there as well. So if you're, for example, looking at React-based customizations, you can actually filter that based on the language. And this is, once again, this is the first version of the portal. This is evolving gradually as well, so feedback is absolutely welcome. I'm going to show this one in practice in a few minutes. But super excited on this one, finally getting this one out. Our old portal was, how would I put it, not quite up to date. So it's good to get this up to date from that perspective. Now, what else? New news from an engineering side or from a marketing, not a marketing side, engineering side. Some of the things what I repeat in all of these calls is the documentation. Please, please, please. First of all, use our documentation. AKMS SPDev docs or docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint, and then the SharePoint development documentation. This is really meant to be the consolidated platform for all SharePoint dev topics. Now, we're still partly in the progress of getting absolutely everything moved over, let's say the active documentation moved over from MSDN, do some resource constraints, but we'll get there. And maturity of the active documentation is already in the docs.microsoft.com site, and all of the new content is getting in here. What's really cool around this one as well is that if you find a bug, if you find an issue, or if you have a suggestion of the documentation, you can actually add a comment, which will be then actually an issue in a GitHub list. So we can then triage that in the engineering and fix the documentation or based on your comments. So please, 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 if something is missing, something is lacking, there's a mistake, please let us know so we're able to fix that. Or if you don't agree on something what we've written there, please let us know as well. That helps us on evolving the guidance. And please, please, please remember to mute yourself. Quite a lot of, again, background noise. So I'm muting a few additional people who've been joining. There we go. Cool. The second thing what I always keep on these slides is the issue list. So please, 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 again, if you find an issue, you're hitting an API which isn't working, or you're using SharePoint Framework, application customizers are behaving strangely, let us know. Please go to the SPDev issues list, create an issue, and we'll triage this at least twice a week in the engineering. It doesn't mean that we actually fix the issue right away, but the triaging means that we are evaluating your submission, we go through and prioritize your submission, and we assign that forward for the engineering people to actually take a look. So really, really super important for us to know if you run into any random issues in SharePoint Online around the development topics, so you're able to also report them to us, so we're able to fix them. Our official support in SharePoint Online unfortunately does not provide support for any development topics, and it's not an optimal situation. So we're trying to kind of resolve this by using this issue list as well. Because if you call it official support, they typically say that, well, we don't actually provide support for development topics. And then the question is, where can you get help? Well, you can get help from the community, or if it's an actual potential bug in the service, please submit an issue and we'll have a look on that. Cool. Final thing, or not quite the final thing before we go to the demo section and everything else, getting started with SharePoint Framework tutorials. I just wanted to have a reminder of this one in here, because obviously there's always new people moving into the SharePoint Framework. SharePoint Framework is rapidly growing from a usage perspective. I'll show you the chart in a second. So people are looking into moving on SharePoint Framework, and if you are not familiar of the SharePoint Framework, we do have up-to-date getting started with SharePoint Framework tutorials, and we keep on updating these like 3 to 4 times in a year to make sure that they're up to date. Sure, the written format is always the most up-to-date version. The video formats are getting updated slightly, well, 3 to 4 times in a year as well. But these are free. These are available for you in the written format and the video format as well, and you can easily then understand how to get started on SharePoint Framework development. So, and if there's any gaps, if there's any tutorials which would need to be there, please let us know, so we're able to add those tutorials in our catalog for the future. And again, we have some background noise. Please remember to mute yourself so we don't actually hear the background noise. Cool. Moving on things. So on the SharePoint Framework usage, the question always is that, okay, so you as a Microsoft, we technically introduced a new development model once again. And then obviously you community members are always saying, well, once again, there's a new development model. Do I really need to move into this one? Is this actually really used? And the answer is, oh yes, the SharePoint Framework is super widely used. So I do not have permissions to show you the exact numbers, but this will show you the curve and the adoption curve of SharePoint Framework from last August until actually Tuesday this week. There is a small data gap on Sunday. I will need to fix that in our dashboards, but don't mind that one. But what's interesting here is that if you have a look on the growth from, let's say, September or October until this week, the usage is more than 4 times within 6 months, and the growth curve is basically insane. So what I'm trying to do with this one is just to show you that if you are in between of should I actually learn to do SharePoint Framework and development or not, the answer is absolutely. People are using this, customers are using this, customers are adapting that. And what's good about the SharePoint Framework is that it is based on industry standards. It is based on a model which isn't specific for SharePoint. So and the most important thing, we as a Microsoft, we build our own stuff using SharePoint Framework as well. So you can guarantee that as long as we build our own stuff using SharePoint Framework, this model will remain, and we keep on supporting this model, we keep on improving this model as we need it for ourselves as well. So super important thing. Ooh, a lot of slides and a lot of discussions. So let's actually talk about. So quick update on the SharePoint development roadmap. You probably heard about this one already in the past. We delivered quite a lot of stuff since Ignite, as we promised to do in Ignite since September 2017. The next big announcements will happen in the SPC 18. So in the 20th of May, in the Las Vegas, the SharePoint Conference 2018. That is our spring event or spring moment, where we will then say what are the things what we've been now working on, and what are the things which we will be shipping within the next 6 to 12 months. But I've added here a few things which were already in here also in a week ago, which is more branding options. So we're looking into introducing the font option for modern sites and modern themes within this spring before SPC, and also there will be more site design actions. So one of there will be site design actions, for example, for installing SharePoint Framework solution to a site as part of the site design getting applied on the site. So you're able to then automate customization deployments as part of the site design model. Good, so nothing too much on the roadmap side, but what I wanted to quickly go through still in here is to share my screen and quickly reiterate the new assets what we have now available in the documentation side and also in the portal side, so you'll have a better recollection, hopefully, around the stuff what is available. So I'm sharing my screen. Somebody needs to tell me when the screen sharing is good, so you're able to see what I'm sharing. It's loading still for Ralph, and Waldek is saying yes, we're good to go. And let's get one more. Okay, David got it. So that means 2 persons from a 108 got it. So that means the majority probably got it. So on a SharePoint development, so basically if you go docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint, I'm going to actually one more time show this. Docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint, this is the replacement for MSDN, and we're moving in the MSDN content gradually. Some areas more slowly than other areas. The active documentation has been already, however, moved over. In this selection, you're able to then select, are you looking into using SharePoint Server, or are you a SharePoint Server, or are you a SharePoint developer? And obviously we are SharePoint developers, so we can actually go to the developer side. On the developer side, and yes, I've used that joke quite a few times. So on the developer side, now we have this new item in the left navigation, which is called Community. And this is basically replacement of the old SharePoint PnP page, if you ever run into that page into dev.office.com, because we are shutting down the dev.office.com and replacing that with a new portal, and due to logical reasons, it just makes more sense to have it in here. If you click the community, you'll find all of additional information around the community, SharePoint developer blog posts, videos, Twitter tweets, issue notes, community calls, and getting all of this stuff. So you're able to download the invites, which, by the way, this particular link is still wrong, and I need to remember to fix that. I was supposed to fix that before this call, but anyway, I'll get that one fixed after the call. And there's also pages around how to contribute. This is a question what we're getting all the time. For example, how to contribute on the SharePoint community if you are willing and if you're interested in doing so. We also have a page for open source projects underneath the SharePoint dev community, SharePoint PnP initiative. GitHub repositories, what are these, what are they for, how they actually work, and we keep on evolving the messaging here as well. And then there's quite a few links around other topics like SharePoint development in YouTube, our videos, Twitter tweets, developer forum, feature requests, and all of that. So this way you have one location from where you can find all what's relevant for you as part of the community and SharePoint development work. Hopefully it will be used more and more, and hopefully you'll find this one useful. If you don't, like I said, please go to the individual page and then give documentation feedback, and this will be then an issue in a GitHub, and we're able to fix or change or add content based on your opinions as well. Super important. Let us know something is missing, something is wrong. Please let us know so we're able to fix that. Cool. The second thing what I wanted to show quickly is the new SharePoint developer portal. So if we go to the developer.microsoft.com/office, let's actually go there. It will redirect us to the ENUS Office version. Will there be localization versions? I don't know at this point. But this in here, we are in the Office developer portal. And one of the big things, by the way, which has been recently updated is the developer program. If you need to have an Office 365 tenant, please join Office 365 with developer program. You will get a free tenant for your development, which is pretty cool. From here, we can then find SharePoint in the middle, apparently. And in the SharePoint developer portal, we can then find what's relevant to news, what's relevant videos for SharePoint, and also what is the code samples, and also support blocks, and there's additional assets here as well. Now, in the code samples, if we go there, we're able to actually, interesting. That's not a code sample, by the way. So I need to again report somebody that there's a small issue on this portal. Sorry for that. This was working perfectly fine earlier today, but well, good that we're getting this stuff actually polished. So this is quite new portal. So let's say that we're in the right location. So now in our search, we can actually filter the samples, SharePoint resources, the SharePoint, and then we're able to say content types would be samples in our case, if we want to find samples. And if we want to, for example, find what's relevant for React, there's 81 samples built on React, and these are actually samples which are in a GitHub. On a quick comment on Gary's question around the developer tenant and the MSDN subscribers, the developer tenant is actually free. It is not time limited as long as you use the developer tenant for developer topics. So as long as you keep on using the developer tenant for development activities like doing development on a SharePoint framework, you will actually get that renewed automatically, which is super cool. So What's actually driving the categories in the sample page? So this one in here on the left side. So these are right now selected by a certain group of people from a slightly different organization than SharePoint. If there's any feedback around these selections or the scenarios or the languages and we need to add more, please let us know. We can absolutely add additional selection in here. And obviously we also have a nice search tool here. So let me actually unblock the React and do something classic and do user profile. And since I'm searching user profile, I'm actually able to find user profile related samples. Some of these are old, some of these are new, but I'm able to find what's relevant for them. Or if I'm interested on React application customizer, and there we go, we have multiple application customizers built in React. And that's actually pretty cool because it used to be quite difficult to find our samples from a GitHub because there's quite a few of them. So now you can easily find these things. And as an example, this one, let's say Q&A chat was an awesome demo which was demonstrated by Rodrigo a while back. You are then redirected to the GitHub, and then you can actually access the sample, pull down the sample, or learn about the sample and learn about the things. So super, super useful. Cool. Let me go back on slides and then continue on other stuff. And Rodrigo is happy on getting mentioned or covered, but that was a really cool sample. So please, please, please have a look on that. Great work from Rodrigo on that one. So let me flip back on the slides and see what else we want to actually do. And David confirmed that it's already loaded. That was fast. Or was it loading? Somebody else, please confirm one more time. So, excellent. That was fast. Interesting. Cool. So let's do a quick update on the BMP JS Clientside Library. So like I said, Patrick Rogers isn't here. Patrick is really the person who's leading the BMP JS. The BMP JS is kind of evolving. Just quickly clarifying this one as well. BMP JS, there's a BMP JavaScript core library, which is an older version of this one. Then the BMP JS is the new evolution of all of that, which is providing a Fluent API for accessing or kind of hiding the complexity of the REST API. If you are familiar with REST API in SharePoint, no problems, you can use that as well. But this one helps if you want to use kind of a more, how would I put it, managed code style, Fluent API style way of accessing information. So you don't have to remember the REST APIs. You can actually do pnp.web.get where's the list, and that's it. The main changes here is that we changed the repository name. The BMP JS is in the BMP organization. There's going to be announcements on that one slightly later in the future. We're doing some reorganization of our samples. But BMP JS is on the BMP organization, and the BMP JS repo has been renamed from the BMP as BMP JS. The fact that if you have already forked this, it doesn't actually impact you. GitHub is super, super, super smart on these things. So even though you would be submitting pull requests or changes back on the old URL, GitHub is actually redirecting that to the new URL, which is super, super cool. There's a CDN support is in the works. There's a weekly beta releases on Friday. So Patrick is planning to release a new version on Friday this week together with the community members. Changelog is updated regularly. There is a updates on the roadmap, and please, please, please report issues on this one as well. BMP github.io/BMPJS is the URL and documentation for this one. But more changes on this one obviously next time when Patrick is also available. Now the next topic is the Office 365 CLI, and I'll let Waldek do the talking on this one so we get some variety on the call. Waldek, still there?
Excellent. Yes, I'm here, but your slides are not. I'm still in browser.
You are still in what?
I am still seeing the SharePoint SPFx extensions page in
You're
browser.
using it wrong. You're using it wrong.
I'm holding it wrong, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So apparently my understanding is that maturity of people are seeing the slides properly. So.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I know my updates off the top of my I had, and while I might skip a thing or two, I can give you a highlight anyway. So
okay, cool.
They'll be all fine.
And then let's see if you start sharing your screen, that it will reset your setup. So
yeah, and then we will do the lowlights.
Yes, sounds good.
Doesn't matter. All right, so we are about to have a release of the CLI, which will be version 1.
Sorry. Please quickly explain what is Office 365 CLI first, because
Sorry,
there
yes.
might be new versions in the call,
of course.
And then jump on the status. So.
You are right, sir. Thank you very much. So CLI is a cross-platform command line interface that you can use no matter where you work on a Mac, Windows, or Linux to manage your tenant. We support different things like manipulating your settings, getting files, creating sites, creating different things, creating groups. We even support, and recently we added even support for the Microsoft Flow. So in other words, it is a command line tool that allows you to manage the settings of your tenant. And soon, one day, we'll have more. We will expand that, but that's announcement for them. Recently, we released a version 1.0, basically to indicate that since October, when we started the work, we didn't get any major blockers or impact that would require us to revamp the way it works. So with that, we thought it's going to be fair towards us and everybody else who works on it to have 1.1.0 and basically show everybody that CLI is going to work that way, that's the right direction. In a few days' time, we'll have new version 1.1, and probably the biggest addition to it is support for the Microsoft Flow, which is new workload that we added. And we thought it would be a good idea because we see more and more people actually using Flow within companies, right? So we want to give you the ability to manage these flows in a scripted way, right? You can build scripts with CLI and are not limited to only browser and a manual management, if you will. Additionally, we also added support for, there were, off the top of my head, we added the ability to get files. We added the ability to work with groups, improve that. We added the ability to get configuration of the site classification. And a few other things that I do not recall, and I cannot see because I do not see sites. Other than that, we go full steam ahead. We really have the luxury of many people who help us contribute either with code or the feedback. So we really appreciate everybody's time and effort that they put into that and basically bringing CLI forward to be a more powerful tool than it already is. With that, if you would like to know more about CLI, please go to aka.ms/O365CLI. And I believe for everybody else except me, you can see the URL on your screen. Yes, so that's a one single URL for you to go to, and in there you will get the manual, how you acquire CLI, install it, manage it, update it, work with it. Basically everything and anything, including links to the issue list, GitHub repo, the places where you can catch us to ask things. So it's just one location for you guys to go to and have all the info you would like about CLI. So with that, I guess that's the time for the click. Next slide, and let me show you how you can use the CLI to get more insights into the Microsoft Flow flows in your tenant.
Yes, let's actually try your sharing. There was a question on Navvar around, is this the new PowerShell? Just to clarify that one again, this is not a replacement for SharePoint Online PowerShell or the BMP PowerShell. And actually, the BMP PowerShell is planned to be cross-platform pretty soon as well. this is just an option on the tooling. Some people prefer the CLI way of doing customer management. Some people prefer PowerShell style of doing management. The people who are in a Mac typically are not really that familiar with PowerShell, so they want to actually use CLIs. What was that? Come on, what was that?
I am on a Mac and I can use PowerShell just fine.
I know that, but classic people...
you have to differentiate one way or another, right?
Yeah, whatever. It's not a replacement.
Anyways.
It's an option.
Yes.
That's really the important thing. Yes.
Yes, it is a different tool to the same end.
Yes, exactly.
All right, so with that, speaking of, about the devil, let me start the CLI by running O365. And that will bring me into the immersive mode where I have now the 365 prompt. And with that, I can already start interacting with CLI. If you want to get list of all commands, you can easily type help. And you will get the prefixes here like AAD, Azure Management, Graph, and SPO. And with that, you will get more commands as you go deeper. If you would like to know how we interact with flows, let's start with connecting to the Azure Management Service that exposes this API. So Azure Management Connect. With that, I will get a URL, and for that we use the OAuth device code flow, and we basically log in browser. The benefit of that is if you work with MFA or you work with conditional access, all that will be handled by AAD, right? So you can use that. You can apply that when you work with the CLI. So here I am signing in with my admin account. I go back to the command line, to my shell, 3, 2, 1, and I'm connected. And I can confirm that by running Azure Management Status. And here you can see that I am connected with this account. So flow. Azure Management Flow, you always start with environments, right? Before you can access flows, you have to know your environments, and you can get them by saying Azure Management Flow Environment List. And that will give you the list of all environments or Microsoft Flow environments in your tenant. Once you have environment, you grab its name, and then you say Azure Management Flow Environment Get. That if you would like to get additional info about the environment, like who created it, who is the owner, and so forth and so on. Now, if you would like to get flows, you also have to have environment, but then you say Azure Management Flow List, Environment. And now you'll get the list of all flows in your environment. Now, these are the flows that I own. But what if I am an admin and I want to see all flows? Well, for that, I can say -- as admin. And 3, 2, 1 as admin. That should be the case. And with that, I will get the list of all Microsoft flows in this environment, and not only the ones that I own. In this case, they are all mine because I am the only account there. But if you are an admin, you would be able to use a CLI to get the access to all Microsoft flows in this environment. Now, for a particular flow, if you would like to get more info, you can grab its name, which happens to be a GUID. And for that, you can say Azure Management Flow Get name. And then we also need to have environment, right? Because a flow exists inside an environment, so you have to have that. And enter. And there's no worries about that. And here you have the basic info. But if you would like to have more info, you can say output JSON. Don't worry about that. And there you go, right? So with that, if you build a script or you want to have more info about flow, like all details, activities, connections, basically everything that's in there, you can get that from the CLI. So that's a perfect way for you if you would like to build some kind of automation. Today, when we record this, you can only get flows. But we already have an idea on roadmap to actually be able to export the flow and also import it at some point, right? So you can expect that soon, that one day you will be able to use CLI to actually do that kind of automation. With that, I give it back to Vesa.
Thank you, Waldek. It's good to see how this is evolving really, really fast. There's clearly a high interest on helping on those contributions. And not taking anything away from the PnP PowerShell or the SharePoint Online PowerShell, which no doubt is used widely as well. So, but it's again a new option, a new way of doing stuff. Now, on the demo side, what I wanted to do, we still have 20 minutes. SharePoint Framework reusable components, not forgetting these ones. So on these, so the new one, there's a new version 1.2.4, which is out, and this is around enhancements on hiding placeholder title on small zones. So when you're, if you are really in a small zone or in responsive or smaller device, it will actually hide the title in the same way as with out-of-the-box web part. And then there's a fixes on the iframe handling, which will help on the dialog handling. Sorry, there's fixes on the iframe dialog handling. Now, the whole point of the reusable SharePoint Framework controls is that these are open source, ready-to-use controls from the community for the community under the umbrella of SharePoint PnP. So we from engineering, we are looking into this quality of these controls. We are not right now planning to release out-of-the-box SharePoint Framework controls as an open source. But what are we planning to do is harvest our web parts and our out-of-the-box first-party stuff and release them as part of this initiative. So basically share you the best things what engineering has done through the PnP. We definitely want to have a look on these reusable controls. For example, from your property panel configuration for your web part, they are super useful. Now, the other topics what I wanted to quickly go through for 10 minutes, because we need to give 10 minutes for Paolo, is a discussion potentially with Waldek. So Waldek can actually ask me the questions as needed around the deployment options. And this is around deployment options on SharePoint Framework. So how to enable the customizations in the sites. And this is almost like a reiteration of some of the webcasts what we've been having. But since we're getting more and more developers moving on to the SharePoint Framework, I think it's better to repeat rather than wait or assume that everybody has followed up on everything what we have released. Now, so the question is, I'm building my SharePoint Framework solution or customization. How will these light up, or how will these be available within the site? So what are my options? Waldek, you were planning to say something.
Well, yes, the last box on the slide doesn't make sense here, but...
How did I do that? So let me actually...
Magic.
So
doesn't matter.
That's an interesting way of... so let
doesn't
me actually do that. So nobody can't... There we go. You can't see what's actually inside there anymore. There we go. At least those where that functionality is fine. So that's what happens when you do copy pasting. Now,
extensions.
And
extensions, right? So
SharePoint Framework solutions in general. So now, there's two main ways of getting the SharePoint Framework solutions deployed on your tenant. There's an option of installing the solution to a site, or then you do the tenant deployment option. And the tenant deployment option basically means that your customization is immediately available within the sites whenever it has been deployed to the app catalog. On the alternative option, which was the site-by-site level installation, which I do actually have slides on both of these, it means that you need to explicitly install the solution to a site before it's available for you. So you as a solution designer or an architect of the customization will need to make this decision. How do you actually enable your functionalities to be available? So now let me actually go a few slides and I'll let Waldek ask some of the questions. Now, there's two main differences. So there's two main component sets in SharePoint Framework. There's the web parts, and they basically have an end-user driven picker. So whenever a web part is getting deployed on a site, it will be then available in the web part picker. Is it deployed using a tenant scoped option or in the site level? It doesn't really matter. The web part selection will be, or the custom web part will be available in the web part picker. SharePoint Framework extensions are, however, slightly different. These are technically available on a site, but because there's no UI to actually enable them, for end users. That's why they're not automatically lighted up in the site level. So you need to do explicit additional steps to make them actually available in the site level. And let me actually quickly go through, or we can actually start asking questions after this following slide. So this is the option number 1. How do I get my SharePoint Framework solution activated on a site level? Option number 1, site-by-site installation of SharePoint Framework solution. What it means is that the end user will go to the site contents and add an app functionality, and then that solution is getting installed to that particular site. Yes, you are able to automate this using ALM APIs. That's why the ALM APIs were introduced back in, I think, December. And so you're basically able to automate this one. What it also means that the web part, as an example, when it's the solution which is installed on a site, if it contains a web part, the web part will be immediately available in the web part picker. But the extensions are not. So the extensions will need to be explicitly light up in the right components in the SharePoint site. And for this one, you can use Feature Framework or you can use APIs to make that happen. Now, Waldek, now. And there's a good question. Sorry, there's a good question. There was a good question. Sorry, there was a good question in the conversation around site collection app catalog. Can I have a site collection app catalog and use the tenant deployed option? Answer is yes. We'll get back on that one in a second as well. Did I actually cover all of the things already? Or should I go to the tenant deployed option and then we can have a discussion? Either way.
Yeah, I think let's cover them both and then.
Okay. So the tenant scope deployment option, apparently animation is slightly, well, not too much messed up. So the tenant scope deployment option does support both tenants app catalog or site collection app catalog. And what it means is that when you're installing a SPFx solution, SPPKG file, either to the tenant level or in the site collection level, that solution is automatically enabled in the scope where you actually of the app catalog. So if you put the solution in a tenant app catalog, it means that solution is enabled poof automatically across the whole tenant. If you put the solution in a site collection app catalog, it will be enabled across all of the sites within that site collection. So if there's multiple subsites, it will be then available in all of the subsites. And again, the same rules apply. If it's a web part, it will be automatically in a web part picker. If it's an extension, you need to, however, again, explicitly light up the functionality. So how do we make the extensions being visible automatically using the tenant level option as an example? You put the solution in the tenant app catalog, and then you run code. You explicitly go to the site level and say site.userCustomAction.add, and you add a user custom action, which then has a reference to the client-side component ID, essentially the ID of the solution, and it will light up the extension automatically. For that one, I do not unfortunately have exact steps. I slightly run out of time on explaining the whole setup, but still. Hopefully that did make kind of sense. Waldek, questions?
Well,
did it make sense?
I guess it will make a bit more sense when you explain. When would you choose for one approach over another? When would you stick with the default approach that you have with the declarative approach in XML? And when would you defer to the code-based approach and register it by yourself?
So yes, so if your solution is kind of as such that you want to have the solution only enabled in a subset of sites when the end user wants that to be enabled, then you use the site-by-site level of a deployment. Now, if your business scenario means that, hey, we need to have the exact same footer or header in all of our site collections across the whole tenant, then you absolutely use the tenant scope deployment option. And then, as part of your site provisioning, for example, in your site design or in your whatever custom provisioning, you are then enabling that extension to be available whenever the site is getting created. Hopefully that again made sense.
So I'm going to fish here because there's another reason for which you might choose one over another, and I will give you a moment to think if you can come up with it by yourself.
Yep. Sorry, can you repeat that? So
there is another reason for which you might want to choose to register the extension by yourself as opposite to use the XML-based approach? Do you know it?
Well, there's multiple reasons, but you can tell.
Well, yes. Well, so the one reason that I would choose myself is the ability to set up the extension differently on each site.
Correct.
Through properties.
Yes.
Because otherwise, in XML, they are stuck inside a package. So every single time, it will be exactly the same setup. But if you imagine that you would like to have extension that either shows different color or location or anything else, then when registering it separately on different sites through a custom action, you can specify properties when you light it up on that particular site for that site. So that gives you that extra ability to do that you don't get when you would use XML.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why we have the client-side component properties option in the user custom action. So we're able, as an example, in the user custom action or in the field object of a SharePoint, so we're able to parameterize that instance to be behaving slightly differently. For example, the background color in the case of header or footer, but it could be a much more complex scenario as well.
Correct. And we're getting 10 minutes in, so I guess that we should give it back to Paolo.
Unfortunately, yes. But I think what we need to do in the future, and I'm more than welcome on getting that feedback from the people in the call as well, should we have more detailed discussion and architectural discussion around these solution patterns in these calls, rather than doing too many always individual demos on individual samples. So are you interested from a community call perspective on having slightly more detailed discussion, architectural discussion, when to use which option, which would then be supporting your things? Okay, yes. So that's what we were thinking as well. We'll just need to make sure that we spend and book enough time on making sure that we cover the topics in a more detailed or detailed enough way in these calls. Now, Paolo, we don't want to actually, we know that you prepared your demo. We know that you have a cool demo around doing build automation in Visual Studio Online for SharePoint Framework project. So take it away.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And actually what we are going to talk about is not completely far from what we were covering a few seconds ago, because it is a discussion about how to automate the provisioning of SPFx solution through Visual Studio Team Services. And those solutions can include extensions. And in fact, we will see how to use build automation and the PnP provisioning engine to automate the provisioning and the deployment of SharePoint Framework solutions in a continuous integration and continuous delivery approach. So just a few words about the idea, and then I will switch to the demo environment. Sorry for my bad voice, but I have a little bit of a cold. So first of all, let's assume that you have a SharePoint Framework solution in which you have multiple client-side web parts and client-side extensions, and you want to automate the provisioning of that solution, which is, for example, built and managed from a source code and project management perspective using GitHub and the Git flow. That's what we do, for example, in a quite big project we are working on as PnP team to create a new demo which will be available in the upcoming months for the whole community. So we have a project, we have multiple people working all over the world, we have GitHub in the back end for source code management, and we want to leverage the PnP provisioning engine for the provisioning of the information architecture of the solution, as well as for the deployment and provisioning of the customizations built with SPFx, leveraging the ALM APIs that we have now in SharePoint Online and, of course, in PnP as well. So we decided to use, as an example for the community and for the enterprise companies, to use VSTS, Visual Studio Team Services, for continuous integration and continuous delivery, to automate the delivery of the solution, targeting a developer tenant that we use for testing purposes, as well as being able to reconfigure and reprovision completely from scratch the target site or the target pages, modern pages that we have in the site, whenever there is a new merge in the dev branch of the repository in which we store the source code of the solution, so that we can almost on a daily basis see how the project is evolving and how it's moving forward. So let's say, just to give you the context, let me switch to first of all, Visual Studio Code. And let me show you that what I'm going to share with you is based on joint forces, I would say, because there are some PowerShell script made by Erwin. There are some build tasks in a build process defined in VSTS, which are the outcome of a discussion we had internally in the PnP team to find the best way to do stuff. So it's not only my own stuff. It's something that we built, I would say, all together in the last few days. And I will start with a PowerShell script very quickly, because this PowerShell script is the one we use to do the provisioning using the provisioning engine, but not only the provisioning engine of the solution. And just to give you the idea that through this PowerShell script, for example, we have some statements here where we try to get a reference to an app using the LM API, which is under the cover of this get PnP app commandlet that we have. We try to figure out if the app we need to install in the target tenant is already there. And if it is there, we remove it in order to being able to update it and to replace it with a new one. Or if it is not yet there, we simply need to add a new solution in the app catalog. And right now, using the LM API, we target the tenant app catalog, which is the only one we can target. Hopefully in the future, we will have the LM API able to target the site collection app catalog too. And then once we have done that, we also play around the hub sites and stuff like that, and then we apply a provisioning template. And what is interesting here is that we have a first provisioning template, which is this solution.xml, which will simply use the syntax that we have in the schema, in the PnP provisioning schema, to install in the app catalog our package, to configure, if needed, a content delivery network. This is a new feature which will come out with the next master merge of the PnP provisioning engine. And then at the template level, we use the application lifecycle management element to provision an app package, so an SPPKG in the target site. Let's say that we have a portal XML template, provisioning template, through which we provision a bunch of stuff, including, for example, at the very end of the template, a bunch of custom actions, which will be client-side extensions that we created in SPFx. So we want to automate this process through an automated build in VSTS. So let me switch to VSTS. Here we have a project in VSTS, and here I have a build, custom build, which is based on a set of steps. And first of all, whenever you want to automate the provisioning and the continuous delivery of your solutions on a target environment, if it is a SharePoint Framework solution, you will need to have the npm install command executed to install all of the packages. You will have to build and prepare the package, and you will have to upload the package, for example, through PnP provisioning engine, as we do in the PowerShell script that I showed you before. So what we do in the build action is, first of all, thanks to feedback from Valbec, we installed the latest version of Node.js, because with this one, we can speed up quite a lot the npm install stage. In fact, we install the version 8.x of Node.js, and right after that, we simply need to make it possible to have the PnP PowerShell extensions available in the host running the build process. And in order to do that, we install the new get support for the current user, as well as the support for the module SharePoint PnP PowerShell Online, still for the current user. And you can find much more information about this approach in a document which is in the wiki area of PnP PowerShell, and which was written by Vincent in the community. And thank you, Vincent. Right after that, we can now run npm install, which is another task of VSTS, so that we can install all the packages that we need. And this will include also the gulp package, for example, so that later on, with another PowerShell script, which is just an inline script, we can run gulp, which is, as you can see, available in the node modules of the current folder, which is the folder of our solution in the host running the VSTS build task. we can just do the gulp bundle ship and the gulp bundle package solution ship, so that we will have the SPPKG file ready to be uploaded onto the target environment. And once we have done that, we can execute another PowerShell script, which will be deploy PS1 file that I showed you. Actually, it's a slightly different one, deploy VSTS, which is slightly different because we need to provide a set of credentials to authenticate against the target environment. And we get those credentials from a couple of variables that we get as input parameters for this script, and then we just call the deploy PS1 script that we have, and through this script we do the real magic. Those variables are defined in the variables of the build definition, and of course we have a password which is well protected, as well as the username that we use to automate the build process. Moreover, we configured the build to be enabled for continuous integration, so that whenever there is a new merge in the target dev branch, we execute a full delivery of the solution, avoiding to execute multiple deliveries happening while one is already happening. So with this flag, batch changes will while a build is in progress. Well, if there is already a build progress running, we avoid queuing much more requests if there are much more merges, but we wait for the build process to complete before handling any new merge, just to avoid overloading the hosts and the Visual Studio Team Services process. That said, here is just the outcome of a build which has been already executed a few hours ago, because it takes about between 5 and 6 minutes, as you can see, to do the full process. But here we do all the stuff. So first of all, we install of the Node version 8.x package, and quite later on, we do the setup of the PnP PowerShell commandlet. Then we do the npm install, and of course we install all of the packages. Then gulp bundle, gulp package solution, and then quite later on, we are ready to execute the provisioning through PowerShell of the solution using the PnP provisioning engine. And I think that's a really useful way of working, because we can have full control on the deployment process, and we have a fully automated deployment process targeting the dev and testing environment, and basically on a daily basis we can do proper testing of the solution. That's it. It was quite a short sharing of ideas and experiences in a real-life project that we are working on. I can give you back the mic, Visa, and that's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Paolo. So there was a question around sharing all of this stuff already, potentially on the build automation. So Vincent actually has excellent stuff on the build automation. I know that some other people have. This is based on Vincent and Elio's and Paolo's thinking, and Irvin has been involved, and a few other people. Now, we are potentially getting this one, the build automation guidance out earlier. We are actually building, as you can kind of guess from the name of the build and the name of the story, we are building end-to-end, let's say, demo portal case where we are demonstrating the limits of the modern capabilities building a custom portal. Now, that one will still take quite a few weeks to get completed, because we can't share you just the code, because there would be too many questions. So we need to first complete the code, first complete the solution, and complete all of the other stuff, and then we're able to share you and the documentation and share you the story. It will be a starter kit for anybody to start using and building a custom modern experiences in SharePoint Online. But that's a teaser. You probably want to be in Build, or well, definitely in SBC or European Collaboration Summit to get more details around this one. Quick question. We are 3 minutes on the out of the clock. Vincent, I think I can loop in Paolo if on the email discussion. I know that Paolo probably doesn't have share his email directly in iWindow, because then there's too many emails flying around. I know for a fact that my inbox, as an example, is a complete mess. John's question, is the LM functionality in PnP PowerShell working? It should be working. We are using that as part of that deployment option as well. If there's any issues, please do report an issue on the PnP site's core repository around that one, so we're able to have a look. Thanks, John. Cool. I think that's it for this one. We're 4 minutes out of our time. Sorry for that one. And let's blame me on that. That was me taking too much time on the intros and everything else. But thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your feedback around the future way of sharing more and more solution design guidance as well here, which we'll definitely do starting already potentially from next week from a provisioning and branding guidance perspective. You'll see more on that in our agenda. We're trying to push the agenda always 24 hours before the session latest, but every single Thursday, well, bi-weekly Thursdays, we have the SharePoint Framework one, and then bi-weekly we have the general SharePoint Dev one, and then we have monthly community calls coming up as well. But thank you everybody for joining. Thank you Paolo for the demo. Thank you Waldek for the demo. Thank you from all of you your valuable input on the IAM window. Please go to the issue list, give us feedback, ping us in social media, let us know if something is wrong, so we're able to help you on your journey in the SharePoint development. Thank you, and let's keep on coding and making cool stuff in SharePoint. Whee! Bye-bye.